Colin Cowherd went scorched earth in defense of Lamar Jackson once again, and a Ravens rival praised Baltimore's secondary. All that and more coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today, making Locked On Ravens both a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day are free and available for you, all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel. Also in audio form, where you can follow along for our content, as well as the same show, both audio and video, 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Today's bonus episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. As I always say, we'll do bonus episodes if the headlines take us that way, and consistently over the course of the season that they have. We have a bunch to talk about today, including Colin Cowherd going scorched earth defending Lamar Jackson. So we're going to talk about what he had to say, kind of dive into everything behind that. We'll also talk about the secondary for a lot of this show as well. A Baltimore Ravens rival, someone who went off on this secondary, ended up praising them in his press conference. We'll talk about what he had to say and talk about those secondary stats. And then Zach Orr backed Marcus Williams in his press conference, talking to the media. So we'll talk about what Zach Orr had to say and just dive into a conversation around Marcus Williams as well. So let's just dive into it here. Colin Cowherd has been one of Lamar Jackson's biggest supporters recently. Now, when he came out of college, Colin Cowherd was not sold on Lamar Jackson. He has since apologized for that and openly admitted that he was wrong on Lamar Jackson. But ever since he admitted he was wrong, he has been consistently going to bat. We've talked about it multiple times on this show, just stuff that Colin has said defending Lamar. And he, again, was praising Lamar Jackson on Friday and actually got a little spicy with his praise / defense, I guess, of Lamar here. It was a segment about the Jets again, and it honestly went into Lamar. It was Jets, Lamar, but ended up being about Lamar. And he said, quote, "He's always going to say the right thing. You're never going to hear Lamar calling out publicly Zay Flowers, unlike a guy in New York. He is the soul of that franchise, completely impossible not to root for." I mean, this is the kind of stuff that, one, is true. Like, all that what he said is true. But two, the fact that he's able to get recognized. Because look, on the field, he's great. Right? On the field, he's playing like the best quarterback in the league right now. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league in general, right? I know Lamar gets a lot of hate for that, the on the field stuff. But off the field, there should be no questioning of the character. No questioning of who he is as a person. I mean, Lamar Jackson is by far and away one of the most humble players in the league. And Colin Cowherd said this, being good and being humble, it's a great combination for a quarterback to have, because there are guys who aren't like that. And what he was referencing with Aaron Rodgers in New York there, the guy who called out Mike Williams for running the wrong route, Lamar Jackson would never do that. Would never do that. He takes accountability himself. If one of his teammates messes up, it's, oh, no, I could have played better. We could have won if I did this. There's a play in the game that I wish I would have had back. It's not about this guy did it. For Lamar, it's about, no, it's on me. It's on me. And he takes pride in being a leader. He takes pride on suiting up every Sunday or whatever day it is in a Ravens uniform and going out there and trying to lead this team to a win. And we've heard it time and time again when he talks about winning the Super Bowl, when he talks about getting to the promised land and achieving that goal. We know he wants to win. We know that he is a super competitive guy. And we know that he's a player, more than anything, wants to stand at the top, but he wants to stand at the top with his teammates. He wants to stand at the top with his coaches, with his team. This is not about, oh, look at me, I won the Super Bowl. Like, yeah, everybody, let's applaud me. It's about, hey, I want to win for this guy. I want to win for that guy. Of course he wants to win for himself too. Like, of course he does. But it's not all about him. For him, it's about the team. For him, it's about being able to share in those moments, the good moments. And yeah, you know what? In the bad moments, he will take accountability. And we've heard him do that multiple times, right? Lamar has had plenty of games where maybe the defense lets him down. Maybe the receivers let him down. And then there are games where he himself lets the team down. And in each one of those situations, he is the one that says, it's on me. I need to do better, and I let my team down. That is the message for Lamar Jackson. So this is an aspect of Lamar, and it goes even beyond that with him. Obviously, giving back to his communities that he has ties to and is involved with, him being respectful to the media, Mr. or Mrs. in his answers when he's approaching and talking to those people. He's always been that guy. He's a humble player. That's the word I keep coming back to, because he knows that, he is this awesome guy and he's an awesome player, but he doesn't let that feed into an ego. He doesn't let that feed into, oh, well, I'm better than everybody. I'm better than everybody else. And this is just the me show. That's never what it was for Lamar. And so we've heard the defense from Colin Cowherd, and he talked about it in this particular segment of, how he's doing on the field, but the off the field aspect of Lamar, this was not like, oh, Lamar was a diva early on and then he's matured to this. No, Lamar's always been this way. Lamar has always been this way. And I'm very happy that Colin decided to address this way, because it's an aspect that I think when we see the negative side of quarterbacks and players in general like that, like George Pickens and his attitude is, getting a lot of attention. Rodgers and him calling out, getting a lot of attention. But, that other aspect of, oh, this guy's being super humble or that guy's being super humble, it's not as put out there. You can observe it happening, but it doesn't get that amount of attention. So Colin saying all of this is, to me, I think, really important. And him saying Lamar is the soul of that franchise. And yeah, the other thing that Colin said, and this is, he's the soul of the second best run franchise in the league. And one of the things about that is it takes a special type of person. When you talk about these high up organizations, teams that are respected throughout the league, you can't just have anybody be the soul of whatever franchise that is. There are plenty of souls of franchises, but there are only a certain number of people that can take on that burden consistently. And I think Lamar Jackson does a great job at it. We know Lamar is playing at an MVP pace. Right now, he is my pick for MVP. I know there's been a lot of conversation about the Chiefs and Mahomes and them being undefeated, Darnold and the Vikings being undefeated. I think the Ravens, if they were a 2-4 team, yeah, sure. I get it. Record has an impact on that. And I'm using that energy for Joe Burrow as well here, where their record's not good enough to have him in that conversation for me. But it's not like the Ravens are there. Yeah, the Chiefs are undefeated, right? Yeah, for sure. 100%. The Vikings undefeated. Yep, definitely. But I just think Lamar is playing much better than Mahomes and much better than Darnold. I'd put Baker Lamar 1-2, for being honest. I put Mahomes 3 probably just because of the record again, and then probably Darnold 4. So that's probably where I have it. But this is a player that does not let things face him, does not make things about himself, is always looking to get better, is always looking to help his teammates, is always looking to make sure that he and his teammates are on the same page. And that can come out in frustration that things aren't going well sometimes. But it's not the toxic frustration of, I'm going to blame everybody and none of this is on me and you guys are taking the heat for it and I'm not taking any blame. Lamar gets enough blame already unwarranted for his on-field performance, which is ridiculous. Again, fair criticism is fair. The criticism Lamar gets is definitely put out there and not fair a lot of the time. But at the end of the day, he doesn't let any of that faze him. He just shows up to work every day and tries to be the best version of himself. And, the best version of himself is a phenomenal player and a phenomenal human being. So, Baltimore's lucky to have him. And, everything that he has done over the course of this is year 7 for him in the league now, which is crazy to think about. He's grown on the field and off of the field. He has stayed the person that he was drafted as in a good way. That's in a good way, right? He's done so much. And I'm glad that, again, this aspect of him, because on the field, we know it. He's awesome. Off the field, he's even more awesome. So love this from Colin Cowherd, and shout out to him for highlighting this. And you know what? At Aaron Rodgers' expense, yeah, you're going to call out somebody, you're going to get called out for it too, because that is not how things operate. I know we kind of backtracked a little bit the next day and the next week on those, if you saw those Aaron Rodgers comments. But again, like Colin said, There is no way Lamar would ever put Zay Flowers or Rashad Bateman or anybody in that situation. He would take the blame himself. Coming up in the second part of the show, I'll be talking about the Ravens secondary because the Ravens rival praised them. So be sure to stay tuned, play, and talk about it on the show. First, the show is brought to you by Arena Club. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a Lamar Jackson rookie card, Derrick Henry rookie cards, this isn't in the cards. I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. Thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com. Now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of the retail price. Every card that was listed was a hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. And for Arena Club slab packs, the experience is a lot better than some of those mystery packs you might have purchased. There is a great display of available cards, awesome hit rates, key grading, and so much more. Arena Club slab packs revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. The Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, and transparent, with a full grade rationale providing an explanation of how your card was scored. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL. Code LockedOnNFL for 10% off your first purchase. And the show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot limited to 100 times your cash. Earn your game all season long on Prize Picks. And for Prize Picks, I love going on there, seeing everything they have to offer. They're always putting out new stuff, so I love seeing what that is. And you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. So for this Ravens and Bucks game, if you want the more on Lamar Jackson passing yards, more on Baker Mayfield passing yards, be sure to do that over on Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use code LockedOnNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use code LockedOnNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. We're back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this bonus edition of the show. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every day. Hopefully everybody's enjoying their weekend. And the Ravens play Monday Night Football, so a stress-free Sunday for everybody who is a Ravens fan covering this team in any way, shape, or form. Appreciate all the everydayers out there who tune in every single day to Locked On Ravens. If you're new to the channel, new to the show, welcome in. Hopefully you stay a while. And if you're somewhere in the middle, welcome back in. A Ravens rival ended up praising the Ravens secondary. I know there's some level of, oh, he didn't mean this, or he's just not providing bulletin board material. Ja'Marr Chase is the one. And Ja'Marr Chase is facing off against Cleveland in that secondary. And Ja'Marr said, quote, "The Browns have the best secondary we've faced besides Baltimore." I'm personally taking this as he's actually praising. Look, sure, part of it might be he doesn't want to give Baltimore material. That's fine. I mean, we know Ja'Marr is certainly somebody who is not shy about giving that bulletin board material, especially against the Chiefs, which is honestly one of my favorite rivalries ever. It's Ja'Marr Chase just despises the Chiefs, and it's honestly very funny to kind of watch how that, like, it's my favorite thing. Just whenever those two are playing, just go and look for Ja'Marr Chase quotes on the Chiefs. That's what I like to do. But I don't think that he's, just saying, oh, like, he didn't have to say this. Like, he didn't have to loop Baltimore into this conversation. He went for almost 200 against this Baltimore secondary. We know he's had success against this Baltimore secondary in the past, right? He's had over 200 before. But I think look, this is my interpretation, all right? My interpretation of this is the actual talent on the Ravens side of things in the secondary. So, obviously Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton, Brandon Stevens, etc. That talent, the Browns have talent in their secondary too, with guys like Denzel Ward, etc., etc. They have a lot of talent in that secondary as well. So that's what I think Ja'Marr is saying. He's not saying that Baltimore's secondary, oh, they're playing the best in the league right now. That they're the best secondary in the league right now. That's not what he's saying, I don't think. My interpretation of this, and again, others might be different, and that's totally fine, but my interpretation is, talent-wise, he thinks the Baltimore secondary has it. I'm sure if you asked him and you gave him the truth serum and whatever, he would probably say, yeah, Baltimore's defense and that secondary particularly is struggling right now. Like, I'm sure that's what he'd say. But in terms of the talent level, the actual talent, because to me, the secondary is not a talent issue. they have talent up and down that secondary, which is why people look, I get if you want to trade for a corner or a safety, if you want to add somebody else, because look, we can be honest, the secondary has not played well this season. They have not played up to snuff. Marlon's had moments. Brandon Stevens has had moments. Kyle Hamilton has had moments. Marcus Williams has not had moments. But regardless, this secondary, they have talent. It's just they're not putting that on the field. They're not on a consistent basis. So, there have been miscommunications, poor play calls, guys not in the right spots, guys blowing coverages, guys getting burnt, every single thing. But I think that the talent level that they have was never the question. It is just the execution that is happening. I mean, look, we can read some of the stats for the Ravens secondary right now. It's not good. I mean, they are 31st in yards given up. They are 27th in net yards per attempt given up. So if you want to judge it based off of sample size or based off of how they're stopping, they're still bottom 5 in both those categories. They're not really generating turnovers through the air. They're 19th in interceptions with 3 of them. They've given up 11 passing touchdowns this year. That's 27th in the league, 29th in attempts. And that's what I want to also just put a disclaimer out here for. Not all the time, but for the most part, the Ravens have been in positive game flow and positive game scripts this season, which does mean there are going to be more attempts, which means more passing yards. That does inflate those numbers. But that is why look, if you're an everydayer on Locked On Ravens, you know this and you're probably tired of me saying it. But for those that don't know, I don't judge defense or offense off of total yards given up. I judge it based off of averages because averages tell you how you're doing in the opportunities you're getting, whether you're getting just a little bit or a lot. So obviously a team that has 300 balls thrown on them, they're going to have more yards given up than a team that has 150 balls thrown on them, just by the math game, right? But in those averages, you can determine how well both of those teams are stopping the pass. And so Baltimore is 27th in net yards per attempt given up. That's not going to cut it. The Ravens have faced a lot of talented receivers over the course of this season so far. A lot of talented passing offenses, a lot of talented quarterbacks, right? This has been a gauntlet, right? I know Zach Orr, it's not been all sunshine and rainbows, and I didn't expect it to be, and honestly, nobody should have expected it to be, but you've gone up against Patrick Mahomes, certified Ravens owner Gardner Minshew for some reason. I don't know why that's the case, but it is. And then you have Dak Prescott, and then you have Josh Allen, and then you have Joe Burrow, and then you have Jaden Daniels. Now you have Baker Mayfield. That is just quarterback after quarterback after quarterback. And again, Minshew's not in that category as the other guys, but that is 5 of your first 6 of your first 7 quarterbacks being really good, either in MVP conversations, one of the best of all time, guys who have either won MVPs or been in other MVP conversations. Like, that is a gauntlet for a first-time defensive coordinator who's never called plays, but you play who's in front of you. The Ravens will get an easier schedule of quarterbacks coming up in these next couple of weeks after Tampa Bay. But these are the types of quarterbacks you're going to see in the playoffs, right? So I'm not giving the excuse. Like, it is something we can take into account, but it's not something I'm using as an excuse and saying, yeah, well, it's all okay because of that. No, it's not acceptable. You have to be better. It's now a trend. This Baltimore secondary is struggling, and that is a trend. But that doesn't mean that the talent is not there. It means they're struggling. But I think what Jamar was saying here, and again, this is just my interpretation, is that the Ravens' talent is great in the secondary. The Browns have talent in their secondary too. That's what I think he meant by the best secondary besides Baltimore when talking about the Browns. But they need to get better. There is no doubt about it. Coming up in the final part of the show, we'll continue with the secondary, talking about what Zach Orr had to say about Marcus Williams. So be sure to stay tuned, plenty to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bets for the Ravens and Buccaneers game on Monday night. The Ravens open up as 3.5-point favorites in that game on the road. So if you like the Ravens as the road favorite or Tampa Bay as the home underdog, be sure to pick your side over on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. We're back. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens here on a bonus edition. Kevin Ostreicher still here with you again. Hopefully everybody's having a great start to your weekend. Be sure to like and subscribe here in video form, follow along in audio form. Really helps the show grow, the community grow. We've established so many great communities here on Locked On Ravens, the YouTube community coming up on 9,000 subscribers. And that's another huge milestone for me when we get there. So really appreciate everybody who has tuned in video form, and also really appreciate everybody who's tuned in audio form as well. Be sure to follow along over there, subscribe over there as well. The audio community continues to grow each and every single day. You can follow me over on Twitter, Instagram at KaleStriker30, or you can also subscribe to Subtext for exclusive conversations and insight about the Ravens. Let's talk about Marcus Williams a little bit. Not a necessarily fun conversation to have, considering how Marcus has played this season, is graded out as the worst or one of the worst safeties in multiple categories so far through 6 weeks. And again, I give it about a month before we start to establish things as trends. We are now a month and a half into the season. It's a concern. Marcus Williams is a concern point, and he's not playing well. We can all admit that. He has been a liability for this secondary, and it's a guy that they signed to a 5-year, $70 million contract. And it's been such a fall off from what we've been used to from him here in Baltimore. Look, he hasn't been healthy his first 2 years, right? We can all admit that. But when he was healthy, the very small sample size and plus the bigger one in New Orleans, he's been such a good player. You know, that center fielder that you can put in single high, you can trust to play in his zone well and be that center fielder. I mean, that is the guy, but it just hasn't been that way this season. And there are probably multiple things you can attribute to that, whether it is, you know, him adjusting to a Zach Orr defense. And I know it's not all that different because, you know, you're going from Mike McDonald in that system internally to Zach Orr, but it's crazy. I mean, he's getting frozen. His zones are getting torched. I mean, again, I'll mention the play last week. Jaden Daniels, you know, Brandon Stevens kind of loses Terry McLaurin and he floats into his zone, and Marcus just kind of freezes and then gets turned around, and it's a touchdown on the back of the end zone. Like, those are plays that consistently cannot happen. It can't. And I know that, again, people are saying, well, just cut him, trade him, get rid of him. The Ravens, there can be those conversations after the year. I think those will be valid then. I don't really see it happening this season. And Zach Orr, when talking about Marcus Williams during his media availability, said that the team and himself have faith in Marcus Williams, saying he can play better and he knows that. Also echoed that Williams had his best week of practice this week. And, you know, how many times have we heard that before for a player? But you know what? Hey, maybe it's true. And, you know, I don't know how you necessarily judge best week of practice versus not. I mean, again, I'm sure there are metrics. I just don't know what they are. But he also said that because Williams hasn't been the nearest guy to play doesn't mean that he's to blame for some of those breakdowns. So just because Marcus isn't, you know, just because he's in that area doesn't mean that, oh, Marcus is the guy that you have to place the blame on. Because look, I will say this too, there have been blown coverages that have resulted in Marcus looking bad. And that's all the way. There have been blown coverages by Marcus that make others look bad. It's a two-way street for all these guys, where let's just use Marlon as an example here. Let's say Marlon blows a coverage and something happens, right? We can use that. Let's use the play from week 1, the Xavier Worthy play, where Marlon looks bad because Worthy just shoots straight up the sideline and Marlon's playing his own and doesn't realize that there's no help over top, and everybody's flaming Marlon, when in reality, Kyle Hamilton blew that coverage and Hamilton admitted, hey man, this was my fault. Like, you know, I was the one. Those are the types of plays that Zach Orr is talking about here, which I understand. Like, that happens all the time. So apparently Williams had an interception in practice this week. He's been around the ball more in practice. He's really excited for Marcus heading into Monday Night Football. They need him. They need Marcus. They still have a lot of time to figure this thing out. They are just a third of the way into the season. There's going to be time. There's going to be opportunity for them to be able to get this ship back on track for Marcus Williams and for the secondary in general. Again, in my opinion, it's not a talent issue. Maybe you can bring somebody in, but who are they playing over is my question. I mean, you could maybe argue for a third safety, maybe corner hybrid to play over Eddie Jackson if that's where you want to go, but they're going to play Marlon Humphrey. They're going to play Brandon Stevens. They're going to play Nate Wiggins. They're going to play Kyle Hamilton. They're going to play Marcus Williams. They're going to play Millette when he gets back. And Ardarius is getting time too, plus Eddie Jackson is. So you can obviously upgrade that unit. I'm not saying you can't, but I do think that it's a little more complicated than just, hey, let's go get a Marshawn Lattimore and plug him in. That's a little more complicated than I think what the Ravens could be looking for if they do want to upgrade. But for this defense to be able to be the maximum version of themselves, they need a bunch of guys to step up, and Marcus Williams is certainly towards, if not at the top of that list. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show today. Again, be sure to like and subscribe on the way out. Follow along and subscribe in audio form on the way out as well. Both video and audio form. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. We'll have more content for you coming up here on Locked On Ravens. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.